Thank you so much for inviting me to this event today. It's really exciting to hang out virtually with so many great people. So I'm going to be talking about lessons from the BC Energy Step Code. This is the front cover of a report that we wrote a couple of years ago, sharing our reflections on our journey to get the Energy Step Code into place. And then as an opportunity to be able to discuss and share lessons across the world. So here's some slides. I'm just going to start with a couple of slides that an industry leader put together. And I don't know, I like Mad Men. I don't know about you guys, but this is how he started his presentation. By 2032, every BC builder will face a simple choice: build like Passive House or build somewhere else. Are you ready? And we really, I mean, setting that tone within industry conversations has been really empowering in BC. We're in the midst of a real market transformation where we're seeing thousands and thousands of new buildings getting built to different levels of the Energy Step Code. So every different types of building type, all different parts of the province, some referencing the top step like Passive House, some lower down, but all getting built above code. In Vancouver, we've got this top step of step code. We've got Passive House. We've got over 360,000 square feet of new development, new Passive House construction underway. Here's an example of the largest Passive House certified building in Canada. That's in the city of Surrey. And from a social housing perspective, BC Housing, our social housing provider, has been a complete leader in both designing the step code with us and then rolling that out. So we see over 3,500 social housing units have been built already to the step code, with another 6,000 currently under permit or under construction. The question that Zach asked in putting this together was, what problem did we try and solve by putting together the Energy Step Code? So on our reflections, we had found, so I work for an energy utility which works in partnership with government and builders to be able to build above code. And we do work on code development, but we typically find that code development can be incremental in nature. So we know, for example, that we can already build really very efficient buildings like the Passive House buildings that many of you are involved in. And yet code updates never seem to meet those standards that we know we can build to. They just kind of inch up over time. There are a whole bunch of above code standards that people can reference, but I'm not a very technical person, and I found it really confusing. Like, how does Passive House match up with Energy Star or Built Green or LEED? Or so it's really confusing in the incentive marketplace, if local government's trying to reference things, what they should be referring to. So our approach in BC has been to set that end game and then backcast what we need to be doing to get from there to here. Sorry, from here to there. So we did a white paper and determined that we could change the industry to get to passive level by 2032. So maybe we could have been more ambitious, but that was the date that we set for ourselves. And then we backcast and said, well, where are we now, which was in 2015? And then what steps do we need to get to in order to get to that level of all buildings being net zero energy ready or Passive House by 2032? And then how can we work in the interim, not just in cranking the code up, but to be working on training and support to build industry capacity to all of those steps in order to get to that top level. Our idea was to bring order to the chaos of all these different building standards and instead lock it into a framework that we could use here in BC. So we have different steps for the different building types. This is for the small homes, so Part 9 buildings here in BC. And so this is a framework where we've got everything. The base building code is going to be passive level in 2032. And then we've got these different steps, which are various levels better than code. And then we've got dates. So in 2022, when the code changes, it will go to step 3. 2027 will be step 4. And then 2032, it will go to that passive level. Now, the trick of writing a code that goes to those performance standards is that it's a performance-based code. Writing prescriptive requirements to achieve all these different outcomes in all different building types is very complicated. So instead, we've used a performance-based approach with air modeling, energy modeling up front, and then air tightness testing at the end of construction to ensure that you've got a quality envelope. It's a really envelope first solution. You've got to get that envelope in place in a really solid way and then put efficient equipment inside it. So this is what, so you imagine like our code before looks like, I don't know, 130 pages, really complicated. This is a table that we put into the BC Building Code, which articulates what the standards are for airtightness, building enclosure, and then equipment and systems. Now, the other secret of what we did here in BC is that one of the challenges of getting provincial codes in place, or state codes, perhaps in other jurisdictions, is that it has to be achievable in every single community in your jurisdiction. And that's challenging for some of the more remote, smaller community with less sophisticated builders. So what we did in BC was allowed our leading local or any local government who wanted to follow the guidance to be able to refer to above levels of code, so different levels of the step code. And so it was largely large communities. So we as a utility support staff within some of the larger communities here in BC, but it also could be like a champion community. Like maybe you've got a building official out in Kimberley, a small city who's a small town who's really, really keen and can really handhold the builders through that. So we were seeing that by allowing local governments to go at their own pace up these steps, we saw a much faster adoption. So within 12 months of the step code being made available to local governments, we had, I think, about 10 or 15 local governments who'd adopt it, which meant that over 50% of all building permits referenced the step code. So now we're in 2021, we've got about 75% of all building permits reference the step code, which means that when the provincial code comes in and locks that in 2022, it's just dealing with that extra 25% of building permits. So it really helps with that market transformation. And then those local governments who started a few years ago are now referencing higher and higher levels of the step code in order to ready industry to move up through those levels to hit that 2032 target. That's the end of my presentation on the step code. But our story doesn't end here at all. Obviously, we need to make sure that the code get locked in 2022 and 2027. We have two particular challenges we're now working with. The first one is that our code refers to energy efficiency. It doesn't talk about carbon metrics. And we've done studies to show that if we just look at energy efficiency, we're not going to meet our climate targets or our Clean BC plan targets that we have here in BC. So local governments, BC Housing, the affordable housing provider here in BC, have all been using GHGI or greenhouse gas metric, intensity metric to lock in as well as energy efficiency. So we're currently seeing how we can get that locked into the step code. And then the other even bigger challenge is existing buildings. And what can we do to provide a step code or an alteration code for existing buildings? And that's where we're looking over at best practices elsewhere, globally and in North America. So I'm super excited to hear what Tom has to say, because we're always referring to the New York model and when we're planning what we should be doing in that existing building space. And we're seeing City of Vancouver, Metro Vancouver already referencing that New York approach. So thank you very much for listening to me, and I'm really excited to hear what everybody else has to share.